Clenbuterol, dosages and protocols. I'm Dr. Tony Huge, and I have assembled for you various experts in the field that you recognize from other videos, from Olympia competitors, bodybuilding competitors, and coaches. So we're going to go down the line here, and we're going to get their opinions on Clenbuterol dosages and protocols.
So you have a Palumbo style. That's always a popular one, and his is the theory behind, our concept behind it is to run Clenbuterol, and even though you don't feel the effects, it's still working, which is true to an extent, but at the same time, you stay on it for maybe 8-12 weeks for your whole prep, and you can actually cause a lot of CNS damage that way. But that protocol is basically, we're starting with the 20 micrograms, and then you work your way up. Some people as high as 100, 150, I think it is. So you have a pyramid. You have a pyramid style up until your show, and that's like an entire maybe 8 to 12 weeks or so. And then you have the standard approach, usually you hear about online, where you would do 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off of a substance. And you would do the same pyramid scheme, but in a much shorter time frame, in 2 weeks. There's another side to that too, and it's just upregulating those receptors with things like you can do Benadryl or prescription versions of that drug and upregulate it so you can take longer time on this drug and not cause as much damage to the CNS. Clenbuterol initially raises blood pressure, but then it comes back down, and it'll do the exact opposite unless you're taking in extreme amounts. That's going to throw off the electrical pulses in your heart. So it goes up initially and then comes back down. So remember, it does increase blood pressure, and it also can lower it to an extent. Clenbuterol happens to be hard on the heart, so it's to each his own with that poison.
And ketotifen being the other antihistamine that causes resensitization of the receptors. All right, Marco has been known for using extremely high dosages of compounds. So I want to know from you, what are the high side of the dosages people have either started with Clenbuterol or they end with at the end of one of these pyramids? And I assume that most people would start with 20 micrograms while they're sensitive to it. That's effective enough. And then what do they work their way up to over what period of time, Marco?
That will be my recommendation, to start very, very, very low dosages, due to the fact that you don't want to hijack your brain and shut down your receptors right away. And if you're planning to use this compound for many weeks, or should I say more than 2 weeks, I highly recommend Benadryl, because it will keep your receptors open, especially during the night when you rest. And the whole idea is to drop your blood pressure from this compound, because it tends to increase your heart rate and your blood pressure as well. So a lot of people can be sensitive to this. Some people can't even feel it, even though I always say this to people: if you can't feel it, the best thing to do a.m. in the morning is to go out, get a thermometer, the ones you use to check the temperature for the babies, and put it under your tongue 45 minutes before you take it and 45 minutes after you take this compound, to make sure that to see what level of degrees your temperature is going. Because for the most part, if you are really not sensitive to this and you don't feel it, your body does still feel the effects. And if you have high blood pressure, or you have a heart condition, you have to be more cautious about these compounds, because it can cause damage and you can end up in ER. So if you have a 20-week prep and you're overweight, and then I highly recommend you get some fat burners on your body right away. So you're going to do 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and another 4 weeks on. Okay. And that's the best way to do it. You can take 2 weeks in, and then at the same time, there is Johimbine and Code Red that you can take right in between cycles. And then I like Johimbine all the way through, because it's really a great compound to run with the Clen. It's almost like peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah, and ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin stack is another one people run in between Clenbuterol cycles to keep the fat burning going, but resensitize those Clenbuterol receptors.
By the way, I like ephedrine, aspirin, and B12 closer to the show, because it makes you flush out your water, and while you're in low carbs, keeps you energy throughout the workouts, and it slows down your appetite.
Marco mentioned testing whether you're sensitive to the specific dosage of Clenbuterol that you're taking is checking your body temperature. The way I check is I put my hand flat on a table and I see if it's shaking. And if it's not shaking at all, then I know I didn't take enough Clenbuterol. If it's shaking just a little bit, then I know I took the right amount. And if it's shaking too much, I know I took too much Clenbuterol and I should back down the dosage, or I'm too sensitive to that dosage.
Also, I've known of competitors, they go to sleep at night, and when they shut everything off, they can hear their heart going, and they can't sleep or close their eyes. Well, that's because they're extremely sensitive to this drug, and they should be taking Benadryl at night, and maybe some chamomile tea to relax and calm your nerves and your blood in your blood pressure, so your heart doesn't beat as fast, and you can relax and get some rest at night. Otherwise, you're counteracting the effects of the fat burnings because you're not getting your sleep and your rest, and your other hormones are not being active.
And there is a debate online as to how effective Benadryl is versus ketotifen, that ketotifen is supposedly much, much more effective at resensitizing receptors. Let's go with Coach Norm.
Speaking for enhanced coaching for Thomas and I, the people that we have on prep, a lot of the enhanced athletes will usually run it for the last 6 weeks. Not to dispute Trevor, 2 days on, 1 day off, only for the last 6 weeks. But as you know, I complain about diet so much. If your diet's on point and you're crushing it like you're supposed to, I don't think you really need to do that high a dose. I mean, we don't usually do over 60.
So only 1 day, with the half-life being longer of clenbuterol, 1 day isn't enough to totally flush out all the clenbuterol. So there's still some level in the body, but you're only running it for, did you say 6 weeks? Okay, 6 weeks. Give me an example of a dosage that you do for the 2 days on.
We'll start with 20, but the highest will go 60. I won't go over 60. Okay. If I have to go over 60, to me, I think their diet's just not on point. Or maybe we need to adjust their cardio.
All right, and since you're a professional bodybuilder and you have a lot of experience with clenbuterol, give me an example of what you thought was like a really good cycle you ran, or what would you do for your next cycle? And do you like the 2 days on, 1 day off? Is that what you would adopt?
So I've done the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off in the past and ran it for a longer period of time. And then I've also done the last 4 weeks before a show and ran it at a higher dose before a shorter period of time. But like Norm said, if your diet's not on point, it's not really going to make a difference. So for me personally, I like the hitting it harder the last 4 weeks instead of running it for a longer period of time.
What'd you do for Fresno?
Oh, and that's the thing too. So speaking of diet, if your diet's on point, sometimes you don't need it. Fresno didn't do anything. Didn't use Clen at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I felt like my diet was on point enough and I was coming in just the way I expected to. So if I don't need it, I'm not going to take it.
So you know hundreds, if many hundreds of competitors and what they use. How common do you think clenbuterol in preparing for a competition is?
I think it's very common. I think in all categories across the board, from girls bikini all the way up to bodybuilding. Yeah, definitely used.
All right, now Bishop, since you're going to be competing in Olympia, you can't actually say what you're using, but I want you to just say what you have experienced in this field of bodybuilding and in other competitors that you've talked to. What kind of protocols have you seen with clenbuterol?
Okay. Well, I know everybody's been talking about the diet, and honestly, that's kind of where we nailed it. I didn't even use clenbuterol for like the last prep for New York Pro. There was none in there. I didn't use any because we had nailed the diet. I mean, everything's about preventive, right? So if you're going to be doing clenbuterol, make sure you guys are also doing fish oils. You got to take your fish oils because that kind of helps with your heart too. Keeps it strong and everything, helps the blood flow, oxygen delivery. You sleep well, actually, when you take your fish oils, guys. So that kind of helps balance the clenbuterol. But like I said, if your diet is on point, you probably don't even need it. You're going to either go up on the amount of cardio you do, try to fasted cardio, or start cutting back on the carbs and try to go keto or something like that. But as far as like the amounts or what people normally use, I would say hypothetically, if I didn't use it for New York and I wanted to get tighter, then I would probably introduce a little bit, but small amounts, just based on like my body and what I've been doing. If you're nailing the cardio, if you're nailing the diet, then most likely clenbuterol is like the last type of direction you would want to go as far as trying to burn off. And again, Yohi and Bind, that's another one that we kind of run, like you say, together. Because when I have used it in the past, I did not do the shaking, but and if I did, it would be like a little. Oh, no shake. Not that I'm using, but if I were, there would be a shake there. But that's how you can kind of tell if you're not, because again, the shakes, and the rule of thumb is if you're shaking, then you're probably taking too much. And if you're not shaking, trust me, it's working. You're just probably not doing too much, and that's just the body's way of alert you to and that you're putting a compound in there that's raising up your blood pressure, and so to speak. So guys,
you guys ready for Dr. Tony Huge final opinion on clenbuterol? Number one, I don't think it's a super healthy approach to bodybuilding. For me, it's an absolute last resort. I don't see the point in using it until we're already under 8% body fat. I mean, if we're above 8% body fat, ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin is going to work just as good. Personally, I use DNP. Don't you guys use it? But I feel like DNP is a lot healthier and safer to get down to 8%. And then if we're already at 8% body fat and we have enough muscle, because the more muscle that you have, the faster you can burn off the fat, then you don't have to be on clenbuterol for very long. We don't have to worry that much about desensitization. See, I prepare for a bodybuilding competition in between 5 and 10 days. So I could actually run a high dose of clenbuterol those last days. I don't have to worry about any desensitization, or a low dose. I don't have to worry about any desensitization, minimal impact on my heart, because I'm running it for such a short period of time, because I saved it for that last few percent of body fat that I had to lose. So that goes right in with what they're talking about, is getting the diet under control and the training under control and the other supplements under control. And then clenbuterol comes in right at the last second and starts at 20 micrograms each day, as long as I feel a little bit of the shake. If I don't feel a little tiny, I'm not talking just a little tiny, just to even be able to tell that it's in my system. And then if I can't feel that, then I increase to 30 to 40 to 50. And personally, I don't see any reason personally to go over 60, because I would never need to run it that long, because I'm saving it for that last little bit of burning that really stubborn body fat, and I use it in conjunction with yohimbine at the same time because they're synergistic.
You can take an empty stomach before you up your dose again, and it will hit it harder doing it that way. So just little tricks like that, you can keep a lower dose and just start taking it again on an empty stomach, and you would save maybe another week's worth of time on that.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to get into fasting and intermittent fasting for bodybuilding, and I would like to run some tests on using clenbuterol during a fast to release the fat and burn more fat during a fast. I think in that environment it's going to be especially effective. Be swole, my friends of freedom, pioneers of human evolution.
Yeah, hundreds on my bed, texting with the bill. Roses in my wallet and I'm flexing it for real. Racks and racks and racks, I look like rookie of the year. Frontin' with the cash, it's getting moody over here. Hundreds on my bed, texting with the bill. Roses in my wallet and I'm flexing.